Member for Fong Lim.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What a fantastic segue to come from the member for Karama's reflections on always looking on the bright side of life. I rise tonight to speak to you about looking on the bright side of our financial fortunes. Today was a day when a couple of pieces of important financial reporting came out, and whilst many of my hardworking colleagues were being accessible to people in the mall at lunchtime, I'm pleased to note that members of our government also made time to hear the Auditor General's report to the Legislative Assembly today, explained in detail. The 2024-2025 mid-year report reinforces and reiterates what was foreshadowed in the... I might just add, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the clock has gone back to 10. All right. Well, strap in, folks. The 2024-2025 mid-year report reinforces and reiterates a lot of what was foreshadowed in the Treasurer's annual financial report in October. And I'm sorry to say there isn't particularly good news in there for any of us, but over the Christmas break, if you're looking for light reading, I would really encourage you to try and take a bit of time to try and work through this one because it does give you a good picture of where things are at right now. The one figure I would draw out of this new set of information that's come out is that our population growth in the year ending to June this year has gotten even worse. So of all the facts and figures that I've given you, I hate to report it's actually still getting worse. And that is now a figure of 0.7% year-on-year percentage change at a time when we have been spruiking that we'll have 1.1% population growth, and in actual fact we need 2.5% year-on-year population growth to support any of our economic aspirations going into the future. It's a serious issue, and what's even more serious is that this document now, the 2024-2025 mid-year report, will confirm that net interstate migration is now, this year, at a historic low. So as bad as it's ever been, it's the worst it's ever been at this point. Well, why is that? I take the interjection from a member for Wangari. I think it probably correlates with the economic policy choices of the last government, in truth. The last remnants of the last government period are what are covered in this data. And so I think it's time for us to draw a line in the sand and move forward and do what we can on this side to try and improve those figures into the future. I won't speak any further about that report today. I'll let you look at it in your own time. What I want to spend a bit more time on now, though, is the Auditor General's report to the Legislative Assembly, November 2024, this document here. And the reason this is so important is because this is an independent assessment of what our public service does. It's an independent assessment that goes above and beyond and isn't politicised and makes some really, really important observations that I think are worth looking at for everyone. What does this report do? Well, it's the results of audits, key findings and financial performance of various entities for the year ending June 30 and 2024, and entities mainly in the education sector for the preceding calendar year. The scope of the efforts in this Act are confined to what we can do under the auspices of the Audit Act. And that may be something worth reviewing in the future, I note for the sake of all in the House, noting that there is significant disparity between what the NT Auditor General can do and what Auditor Generals can do in just about every other state and territory in the Northern Territory. Audit coverage of general government sector revenue only covers 34% of what we do in revenue. That's only 2.6 of $7.7 billion that the Auditor General looks at in terms of whether it's been well allocated, well earned. Likewise, coverage of general government expenses covers only 32%, 2.7 of $8.3 billion. So what then of our operating performance? What is the assessment by the Attorney General? Well, the first thing to note is that our net operating balance in the 2022-23 year was a modest surplus, but again, I've mentioned this before, it was attributable to GST recalculations, basically a rising national pool and the Northern Territory share improving. In the 2023-4 year, there is a $638 million deficit, and that's about employee expenses, that's about back payments and enterprise agreements, and specifically the cost of agency and medical staff and overtime costs, things that I've drawn attention to before and that are actually bankrupting our system. It's stuff we can't ignore for much longer. That's the brutal truth of it. Now, on revenue and expenditure itself, there is a growing gap. And the really important thing to understand here is that the linear extrapolations of the lines between revenue and expenditure are getting wider. They're getting wider, and they're now at the point where, and they've been getting wider since 2016, and I think that probably speaks for itself. Revenue year on year is at 4%, where expenditure grows at 5% annually. We've got to bring those lines closer together again. There was a point where they intersected, and that was a long time ago. On employee expenses, public sector staffing has grown 12% over the last decade, not commensurate with population growth, even remotely. Our population growth has been less than 4%, and our public sector growth has been, as I say, in excess of 12%. Employee expenditure is up 50% from 2014 to 2024. And of greatest concern to me, and of concern to all of you, I believe, should be of great concern to you, is the consistent gaps in that period between the budgeted and the actual. And not just the budget and the actual, but between the actual and the budgeted and the 1, 2, and 3 year forward estimates. What I'm saying to you is that every year we say we're going to fix it next year or the year after or the year after, and then we come back and report and say, actually, we blew the ceiling off it again. Something isn't right there, and the Auditor General is asking us to take that seriously and look at it. Our total cash deficit is $771 million, and our liabilities now are a staggering $9 billion in borrowings in the general government sector. But the real travesty in this is that interest on loans and advances is now $328 million. That's up from the 290 of the last year. That's a lot of interest. And honestly, unless we tackle it head first, we're going to be in real trouble soon. I won't say more about these facts and figures. I will simply implore all of you, through the Speaker, colleagues, to please take the time to look at these documents, which take a lot of time and effort and energy to produce, a lot of time to communicate, and frequently don't get looked at with any real, with any real effort. One of the reasons that we have such a large amount of interest payable is because over a period of time we have focused on expending on infrastructure, some of which quite clearly hasn't manifested and hasn't been necessary. It's the source of a lot of our financial woes, and the pursuit of ventures of vanity, to be honest, rather than essential and critical infrastructure in some places, is why we are having conversations about where are we going to find the money to underground power lines, or how do we rebuild suburban infrastructure. What's really important, in addition to thinking about essential and critical infrastructure, is also enabling infrastructure. Enabling infrastructure is the stuff that you need so that you can get a leg up to get to the next level. And in the interest of it being the last sitting day, I won't cite literature, but the urban planning literature will tell you that if you want to be able to have a strong head on a body, you need a really strong neck. And the metaphor is one in relation to Darwin CBD, Darwin itself, and what leads into it. And fortuitously, I am the member for the neck. Fong Lim and the Stewart Highway corridor leading into the city, and indeed even on the Tiger-Brennan side, is an area that has fallen apart in terms of enabling infrastructure being invested in over a long period of time. And I am committing here to you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and to all of you as colleagues, that that is what I'll be fighting for in the year coming, because honestly speaking, unless we stabilise and strengthen the neck, we're not going to be able to prop up the head of the body of the Northern Territory. I look forward to us working collectively in the year ahead towards rebuilding the economy over the coming years. I see glimmers of hope in this place of the capacity to collaborate. I'm heartened by the manner in which proceedings are being conducted under the auspices of an independent speaker. I think that everybody has been given ample opportunity to express themselves in this space. And again, I implore all of us to make the best use of the time we have. I promise next year that I will wear one of my many Santa suits at this time of the year and not speak about the economy at this time. But I hope that when I do so, I'll be spreading jovial, joyful news about how the economic prospects for the Northern Territory have improved and that there is hope on the horizon. With that, I wish all of you a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year as well. I hope you and all your families will be safe and have a prosperous break and a prosperous New Year and a relaxing break ahead of you. There are obviously innumerable people to thank. I simply say to all the people of Fong Lim, thank you for entrusting me with the opportunity to represent you, and I shall certainly do my best for you in the coming year. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you.